Hello, welcome to our presentation entitled Culture and Moral Behavior. So first thing first, let us define what is a culture and moral behavior. According to different sociologies, they have differently defined the term culture. For Taylor, culture is the complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, customs, and habits, and any capabilities acquired by man as a member of society. Meanwhile, Linton referred culture as social heredity, which is transmitted from one generation to another with the accumulation of individual experiences. And John also refers culture as the way of life, which is transmitted from generation to generation. Even though they stated their own perspective on how to define culture, they all have the same thoughts and values to teach for every single of us. Culture is one of the most important concepts in sociology. No human society can exist and develop without its culture. The main difference between the animals and the human society is of culture only. Animals have no culture because they do not have the systems of learning and transmitting social experiences. That's why this sociologist emphasizes the word society and being transmitted. Let's now proceed to the types of culture. We have here the material culture, non-material, real, and ideal. So first is the material culture. From the word itself, material, we are referring to the physical objects. For instance, house, road, vehicles. These are the products of human efforts to control his environment and make his life comfortable and safe. All of these physical aspects of culture can help to define one's behavior and perception. For example, technology is a vital aspect of material culture in today's generation. One given situation is using social media platforms and any technological devices to learn and survive in college. Next is the non-material culture. We include non-material objects, for example, religion, ideas, customs. It does not have physical shape. This type of culture determines how the culture responds to its issues and events. Third one is real culture. Basically, it can be observed in social life, means the culture on which we act upon in our daily life is real culture, which the people adopt in their social life. For example, if a person says that he or she is Muslim, will be, when followed all the principles of Islam, is the real, when doesn't follow is not a real one. Opposing the real culture, we have here the ideal culture, which is presented as a pattern to the people and refers to the practices, values, or norms that society is supposed to follow or desires to achieve. We see what we want to see, we say what we want to say instead of what the actual interpretation of the society can be like. Let us now move on to the characteristic of culture. Culture is learned, shared, transmitted, and changing. So why do we say that culture is learned? Because simply, it is acquired through education, training, and most especially experience. On the other hand, all traits, attitudes, knowledge, and any material objects like TV and automobiles is actually shared by members of society. Of course, when culture can be shared, it is also being transmitted. We learn new fashion, how to move in society, and how to behave in a particular social situation. Last characteristic is changing. Yes, we cannot deny the fact that culture never remains static, but changing. It is changing in every society, but with different speed and causes. So let's now go to moral behavior. What does it mean? It is concerned with the principles of right and wrong behavior and the goodness or badness of human character. And we also have here the moral behavior, a term used to refer to behaviors that are included in moral domain and to act according to one's moral values and standards. So, I hope we all understand that part, for it is naman a self-explanation. But of course, speaking of moral behavior, culture definitely has a role in moral behavior. Behavior determines culture, and culture determines behavior. So, let us now find out what its role. There are a lot of roles of culture in moral behavior, but to sum it up, it is to shapes our moral behavior, it influences our perception of what is right and wrong, it gives unity to the people in the society. So what do we mean that culture shapes our moral behavior? Culture plays a big role in determining how an individual behaves in any given environment. For example, some places burying the breast is seen as normal, while in some places it is forbidden. Some places allow males and males to mingle freely in public places, others do not. So, culture undeniably does play a significant role within shaping moral behavior and extends even farther to social norms. Rather than defining our moral behavior, it influences and changes our definitions of what ought to be deemed morally acceptable by consistent exposure to it. For our given examples, this has tremendous impact on behavior and is evident when these persons go to a place that has a different culture compared to theirs. They encountered what is known as culture shock. Next is how culture influenced our perception of what is right and wrong. Some schools of thought believe that everyone has their own ethics. This means what is considered right or wrong depends on the time, place, and even the particular preferences or practices of a group of people or individual person. There are cultural and individual differences. In some cultures, people may think it is wrong to place their elbows on the dinner table, while in others, it is totally acceptable. Some people may prefer drinking tea and others coffee. To further understand, we need to clarify that normative ethics deals with how we should behave and live our lives, particularly when our actions affect others. Lastly is culture gives unity to the people in the society. It can easily identify a culture by examining the behavior and acts of people in a country. Like for example, in this country in India. India is a land of unity in diversity, where people of different sects, caste, and religion live together. India is also called the land of unity in diversity as different groups of people cooperate with each other to live in a single society. Unity in diversity has also become strength of India. Moving on to the cultural relativism. What is cultural relativism? The view that ethical and social standards reflect the cultural context from which they are derived. Understanding different approach can help us to grasp the importance of cultural relativism and where ethicists misunderstood its positive contribution. In other words, cultural relativism is the idea that each culture or ethnic group is to be evaluated on the basis of its own values and norms of behavior, and not on the basis of those of another culture or ethnic group. It is the ability to understand a culture on its own terms and not to make judgments using standards of one's own culture. The goal of this is to promote understanding of cultural practices that are not typically part of one's own culture. Overall, there is no right or wrong ethical system but why does it says that it is not tenable in ethics? When we say tenable, It is to be able to maintain or defend it against objection. It stated that failure to recognize that cultural relativism is a cross-cultural principle leads ethicists to envisage an intracultural relativism where the validity of any one society having any moral standards is denied, resulting in moral chaos and ethical anarchy. So first is, let us clarify what is being said that it is cross-cultural. Means that the principle of cultural relativism only has relevance across cultures, not only within one culture. It is cross-cultural and not an intracultural. Actually, culture is very relevant to ethics since most of ethics is based on cultural biases and values, rather than some objectively deduced and verifiable standard. So, ethics is generally relative to the culture it is in. That's why different cultures have different ethics. If we remove cultural background, we will have a very different set of ethics than that in any culture in the world today, which doesn't mean everything a culture says is ethical. Just that most of ethics has a cultural basis. This can also be said about species. For example, what's ethical for a spider to do is not necessarily ethic for human to do. We also have here the example of cultural relativism. For instance, a Filipina has an American boyfriend. In their culture, premarital sex is normal behavior for the vast majority of Americans and has been for decades. However, a Filipina living in a Christian country where it is considered as immoral is under a dilemma of choosing between giving the pleasure to her American boyfriend even if it is against her culture and religion, or not give him what he wants as a respect to her culture even if they could possibly break up because of it. This is an example of difference between their culture. Premarital sex is normal behavior for the vast majority in Americans, while in the Philippines, as a predominantly Christian country, considers that only sexual behavior morally and legally acceptable and appropriate is heterosexual intercourse within a monogamous marriage. So, this difference between their culture might lead to break up if they can't understand each other. And down to the last topic. Here is an Asian and the Filipino understanding of moral behavior. For Indian behavior, cooperation is highly valued. By that, we can say that in Indian, cooperation is really familiar and highly considered. The value placed on cooperation is strongly rooted in past, when cooperation was necessary for the survival of family or group. When it comes to group harmony, most Indians have a low ego and strive for anonymity. They stress the importance of personal information, or what we call social harmony, rather than task orientation. The needs of the group are considered over those of the individual. We also have modesty and generosity. Next is the Pakistan behavior. Traditionally, family values are known everywhere in this multicultural environment. The rural areas of Pakistan are still dominated by their own tribal customs dating back hundreds of years. In addition, uniqueness is into Pakistan culture. This culture revolves around the religion of Islam, which teaches equality among every human being that exists on this planet. Moreover, Pakistan culture is very diverse. It has been invaded by many different people belonging to different races. As for Chinese behavior, so here, traditional and modern Chinese life, full of mystery as it can be difficult to understand. They want to fulfill their own potential, like opting out to be catering business. But Last but not the least, our very own Filipino moral behavior. When it comes to culture, Philippines is one of the richest. Some are these. First is close kinship. A Filipino considers family as an important social structure that they must love and care. So, close family ties results to the family still being intact regardless that the children are old and with families of their own. Respect for elders. The use of po and opo in conversing older people is a sign of Filipinos' respect for the elder. Most of the Filipinos do not send their elders to nursing homes because they still value the worth and their presence at home. Filipinos are also very famous when it comes to being hospitable. For example, they even give pasalubong or welcome gifts and pabaon, farewell gifts to guests. But not just that. When it comes to religion, Filipinos have strong faith in God. Their faith in God keeps them united to overcome all the problems and challenges of life. Flexibility, adaptability, resiliency. The Filipino have the trait to laugh at themselves and their misfortune of failures. This is a coping mechanism to balance emotional stress and to boost the capacity to survive. Filipino can smile in midst of problems and hardships. They can still crack jokes despite of the stress they experience and even during calamities. Filipinos are strong and cheerful people. Followed by ingenuity and creativity, Filipino are good inventors. We are often into improvisation and makes productive use of available resources. And patience and self-sacrifice, hard work and industry, fairness and justice, readiness to share and help. So all of the said behavior are the strengths of Filipinos, but we cannot deny that weaknesses are also present. There are the following: bahala na, ningas kugon, colonial mentality, mamaya na at patigasan. So, I assume that all of us know these words because we all experience that kind of thing. But after all, we're just human, making mistakes, and sometimes also failing. So, bahala na leaves everything to chance or just let the circumstances take care of themselves. Ningas kugon, Filipinos start things with great enthusiasm, but at the first sign of difficulty, the enthusiasm is consumed as fast as it has ignited. Colonial mentality. Filipinos prefer foreign-made products instead of patronizing Philippine-made ones. Mamaya na, a sign of laziness of leaving for a later time what can be done at the moment or today. Patigasan. Most of the Filipinos find it hard to say, I'm sorry or pasensya na. Their precious pride always gets the best of them. So, it is the end of our presentation. We hope you cope up something and learn from us. Thank you for listening and God bless.